This argument that, there was unfair, prosecutorial overreach, it's just obscene. And so, no, it's not a great day for the Biden family or the country. And I think the fact that the Biden family cartel has been exposed, you know, that's what this is all about. This is not the gun charge. That was something where he might have done some jail time, but not much. It's the 10-year window that Joe Biden pardoned him on. And that's a lot of crime in those 10 years.
President Biden, he always said he would not pardon his son, Hunter.
I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
That was until now. Biden has now signed an official pardon to his son, who was facing sentencing for 2 criminal cases. He's been accused of hypocrisy and lying. The Democratic fundraiser and strategist Lindy Lee told Times Radio this move set a new low bar for presidential pardons.
Gerald Ford's pardon of Nixon? This is even more all-encompassing than that. Worse than Nixon. That is not a moniker that you want.
Worse than Nixon. David Charter is the US Assistant Editor for The Times. Hello to you, David.
Hello, John, from Washington, D.C.
Good to have you here, David. So this pardon, Republicans are up in arms and the Democrats are split too.
Democrats are split. I mean, there has been some sympathy for Biden, who, in quite a long statement, he appealed to the American people to understand him as a father and as a president. When it came to pardoning his own son, his only surviving son. And I think there will be some, on one level, some human sympathy for Biden, having just been at his big old family traditional Thanksgiving gathering in Massachusetts. Presumably the whole family was bending his ear to say, look, you've got 40 days or so left as president. Donald Trump has won. He's threatened to bring in a special prosecutor to go after the Biden crime family. So do what you can to protect us, and we may see more. We may see his brother Jimmy is also a bit of a wheeler dealer who's been trying to do deals based off the Biden name. We may see one for him later, before Biden leaves the White House. But this unfortunate family dilemma has really given Biden's legacy a knock, as my colleague Alistair Dorber said earlier, I believe, because one of the biggest mistakes, of course, was saying over and over categorically while he was running for president that he was on the moral high ground.
Yes.
Re-elect me as your president because I'm morally superior to Trump. I won't misuse these extraordinary powers of the presidency for personal political reasons. But not only has he broken that promise, in so doing, in his statement, he's called the convictions of his son, who, let's face it, lied to buy a gun, which is one of the convictions, and then didn't pay hundreds of thousands in tax, actually, for over a period of 3 or 4 years. Eventually, he did pay back his tax bill.
Yeah.
That's a pretty serious crime. But he's basically called both of them a miscarriage of justice. Well, it's exactly the language that Trump uses about the pursuit of himself by federal and state authorities. But also for the conviction of all of those who stormed into the Congress on January the 6th, 2021, who now look if that had gone very quiet, actually, Trump's promises on the campaign trail to pardon most, if not all of those, well, that's clearly right back on the agenda. And I would think on January the 20th or 21st next year, we'll see dozens of people walking out of prison who were among those who burst into and ransacked Congress.
Yeah, and I'm going to look at this likelihood of Donald Trump doling out pardons in numbers a bit later on, and no doubt using this Biden pardon as part of the background to all of that. But there's no getting around the fact that Biden said he would not pardon Hunter Biden, and now he has. The charge of hypocrisy and misleading the country seems to be nailed.
I think it's just yet another blow, as if the American electorate wasn't cynical enough already. It's just corroding what faith you might have in politicians a bit further, isn't it? Because when you get a president making promises on the campaign trail, that's what you've got to go on when you vote for someone for the next 4 years. So people could have said, well, I voted for Joe Biden because he is the moral choice. Trump's policy, I might actually like Trump's policies, but he's a horrible man. He's beneath contempt for his personal behavior. So I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because he at least upholds certain standards that we've been used to in public life. Well, unfortunately, those have now been blown out of the water by Joe Biden, and whoever comes along to take on the leadership of the Democratic Party has got even more work to do, I think, to convince the public that when they say they'll do something, when they'll say they'll uphold rigorous standards in public life, will they be believed?
All right. Good to talk to you, David Charter in Washington. Thank you. Now, let's get the thoughts of Greg Swenson, who is of Republicans Overseas. Hello to you, Greg.
Good to see you, John.
Greg, tell me, what are your thoughts on this pardon?
Yeah, I think it's pretty outrageous. Maybe I can't blame Joe Biden, the father, for having some sympathy or looking out to protect his son. I mean, maybe that's just natural, but I do think after all the lying and all the statements, and more importantly, I kind of get the argument that the gun charge might not have been prosecuted if it wasn't Hunter Biden. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I kind of understand that there should be, they can make that argument that it was a paperwork charge, and usually those are overlooked. But the fact is, he dumped the gun in a garbage can across from the school, number one. But number two, the tax evasion charges, that has nothing to do with being Hunter Biden. People get indicted and prosecuted for tax charges consistently. There were 2,500 criminal investigations by the IRS in 2022. 90% of those were convicted. So, this argument that, there was unfair, prosecutorial overreach, it's just obscene. And so, no, it's not a great day for the Biden family or the country. And I think the fact that the Biden family cartel has been exposed, that's what this is all about. This is not the gun charge. That was something where he might have done some jail time, but not much. It's the 10-year window that Joe Biden pardoned him on. And that's a lot of crime in those 10 years.
Well, I mean, the fact is that Hunter Biden was guilty as charged. There's no getting over that. And the president has done exactly what he said he would not do. However, this is going to be used, isn't it, Greg, by the president when he becomes the president as a kind of political cover for pardons to the January the 6th rioters, the insurrectionists, and the two sets of offences. They're not analogous, are they? They're in a very different order. Yeah,
I mean they are. I mean I can disagree with the term insurrectionist, but were they a bunch of chuckleheads that stormed the Capitol? Yeah, but I think in that case, the president will probably argue that they've done their time. They were investigated, prosecuted, and have done jail time. So a lot of times pardons are for people that have already served some of their sentence, and then the president pardons them. And whether you agree with it or not, there's obviously subjectivity there. But in this case, he hasn't even been sentenced yet, and it's also a blanket pardon for all of the crime, all of the influence peddling, the money laundering from the Biden family cartel, all of this stuff. I mean, it goes actually before his discharge from the Navy for failing a drug test in 2014. So this covers a lot of ground. And I think there was real nerves in the Biden family that the more investigation into Hunter, the more you'd see connections to Joe and to his brother James and to the entire family. So
it needs to be said, Greg, doesn't it? The suggestion of money laundering and other serious crimes by those you describe as the Biden cartel, they are absolutely dismissed by the Bidens and by those around them. As we're putting that on record.
But there are bank records, of 10% to the big guy, and all of the evidence in the Hunter laptop, which they did a great job of covering up in 2020. Okay. But most of that stuff it's not arguable. It's just is. And so in fact, a lot of the real crimes from the money laundering, the influence peddling, and then the FARA Act, which is the Foreign Agent Registration Act, that's all stuff that they let the statutes of limitations expire on that, the Biden Justice Department. So, they sat on a lot of stuff. The Congress has investigated it. It's all very fact proven. And now it's been swept under the rug, although I'm sure there'll be some media inquiry into it in spite of the criminal.
Well, we won't, you'll understand, litigate those allegations
No,
now.
course,
It would just take too much time.
Fair
We
enough.
don't have to devote to that subject now. But you say, and I think you're right, that pardons are generally given to people who have served at least a portion of their sentence. That does not go for Hunter Biden. Some of those who were sentenced after the January the 6th riots were sentenced to long terms of imprisonment, 20 years plus in the case of some of them. You're not suggesting they should be pardoned, are you?
Well, I think there might be some merit to that. Again, presidents choose to do this, and it's always controversial. But if they feel like that they were persecuted, or maybe their sentences were too long, and so you can make the argument that obviously Jan 6 was a miserable mistake, but it was trespassing. Yes. Was there an insurrection? Nobody was armed. The only person who was killed was a protester, killed by unarmed protester, obviously killed by point blank by a federal officer. So that this is something where you could make the argument that they've done their time. They've served probably 3 or 4 years now for the trespassing charges, and that's enough is enough. And again, that's not necessarily my view, but
is it your view, Greg? I mean, you set out the argument. Does it happen to be your view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, those, again, huge mistake. I mean, the chucklehead running around the Capitol with a Viking hat, really bad look and a bad day for the country. But it was trespassing, right?
Yeah, well, he got a comparatively short sentence, but others who were part of those militias and behaved in a dangerous way, they were plotted what went on with the purpose of interrupting the lawful, legitimate, constitutionally authorized business of Congress. They were sentenced to 20 years and more than 20 years. Are you suggesting they should be released? Yeah,
I think that's a little much. Again, I'm not a prosecutor, but I just think that's overreach and overdoing it. And so lesson learned, and I think they should, I definitely make an argument that they should have done jail time. But with the way that they're reducing felony offenses in big cities in America to misdemeanors and siding with the criminals and not the victims, this has gone on for at least the very least the Biden term. So
we do get, Greg, a very clear picture of how this argument is playing out now and how it's going to go on playing out. Just a thought on the latest news from the senior appointments to the Trump team. Kash Patel, who is, another one of those firebrands, is the cliche word that's often used to describe Kash Patel, who has made it clear he means to wage war on the Ministry of Justice and agencies, including the FBI, of which he would be the director. What do you make of that? It's pretty provocative, isn't it?
I mean, he is a provocative guy. I haven't heard the term wage war, but there's no doubt that the Justice Department needs to be cleaned up. And remember, Kash Patel was one of the first people in Washington in a position of authority to discover the Russia collusion hoax and the fact that the FBI was lying on FISA warrants. I mean, this is stuff that's really bad news for justice. So I think they need a disruptor like him to clean it up. So good for Trump for doing it. I think if you just look, there's countless examples of the overreach by, calling parents at school board meetings, enemies of the state, and following American citizens around that have political views that don't match up with the Democrats in Washington. This has been going on for 4 years, and I think there needs to be some house cleaning at justice, and again, cooperating with censorship on the Hunter Biden laptop, the Russia collusion hoax, and the cooperation they got from the FBI on that. CIA was involved too. The 51 former intelligence officers who said the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation. I mean, the list is long, John. So I think, having a disruptor is important to clean up some of the activity at
Greg,
justice.
Got to leave it there. But Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas, thank you.